the U.S. and Canada sliding deeper and deeper into a trade war. Canada says it will match President Trump's 50% tariffs, dollar for dollar. Last-ditch negotiations fell apart over the weekend, and Americans are now facing higher prices. Some examples: milk, honey, smartphones, liquor, and even wigs and fake beards. And just a short time ago, President Trump raised the stakes, posting this, quote, on January 1st, 2027, tariffs on all cars, trucks, both large and small, automotive parts and steel will be increased to 50%. Build in the United States and there are zero tariffs, end quote. Canadian leaders say this tariff fight is damaging the very long relationship between the neighboring countries and their people. CNN's Kevin Liptak is over at the White House for us. What more are you learning right now, Kevin? This is very worrisome.
Right, and you can see how this is escalating now very quickly as both sides promise retaliation after the U.S. imposed those 50% tariffs on $20 billion of Canadian goods. Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, promising to match that dollar for dollar. Now President Trump threatening to impose those 50% tariffs on autos, but also steel and automotive parts on January 1st. Now, I think the question now is whether we're in the escalate to de-escalate phase of all of this. President Trump, at least for his part, does not sound as if he's in a de-escalatory mood. He said that Canada had been ripping off the United States for years, that they were among the worst nations in the world to deal with, and that the United States doesn't need Canada, they need us, which is quite a striking way to talk about not only a neighbor of the United States, but also one of its closest trading partners. Now, both sides of this are offering differing points of view about how all of this fell apart. This morning, the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said that Canada had imposed last-minute demands. And Carney, in fact, said that it was the U.S. who imposed last-minute demands and said that it called into question the reliability of any deal. Now, the 50% tariffs that went into place over the weekend, they really only account for a small fraction of trade with Canada, about 5%, in fact, but it is a consumer-facing list. It includes things like Christmas ornaments, hockey sticks, fishing rods, dog leashes, and muzzles. So that could take a major toll on exposed sellers. And it's not really clear at this point how all of this ends. At this point, there are no scheduled negotiations to try and reach a full-scale trade deal with Canada.
I want to ask you about something a little closer to home in the U.S., and that is the renewed trade war between Canada and the U.S. going dollar for dollar on 50% tariffs. Trade talks collapsed on Friday night. The Canadian Prime Minister blamed unfair last-minute demands by the U.S., saying the administration asked too much and offered too little, and that Canada is effectively at war with the U.S. on trade. Does that help Americans right now?
Look, we hear about the issue of affordability right now, and as you know, I've taken a firm position since Liberation Day tariffs that fortunately the Supreme Court turned over, that American businesses and American consumers pay American tariffs. And I think the last thing we need right now, as our economy is getting back on its feet, is a trade war with Canada. But yeah, my hope is I was in on all the negotiations for the USMCA. Mm-hmm. I know the tough line President Trump draws. It usually is accompanied with short-term action and hot rhetoric. We're getting the same from the Canadians. But my hope is, for the sake of American families and for the sake of the American economy, that what we're looking at here is negotiation and not confrontation in a trade war. And that's how I would advise the president. Drive a hard bargain, but let's pursue free trade with free nations, most especially our trading partners to the north.
The trade war between the U.S. and Canada has escalated after talks imploded over the weekend. The U.S. has imposed a 50% tariff on $20 billion in Canadian goods, hitting a wide range of products, everything from milk, honey, beer, and wine to hockey sticks and fishing poles. Prime Minister Mark Carney is now vowing to hit back with a dollar-for-dollar tariff on all kinds of U.S. goods, including steel, dairy, paper products, and electronics. That would start September 8th. Carney said the U.S. asked too much and offered too little as trade talks collapsed. Joining me now is David Eby. He is the Premier of British Columbia. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. You have said that the U.S. deal that was offered Canada revealed the true nature of what the White House really wants from Canada. What do you think President Trump really wants to do to Canada?
Well, I mean, you just have to listen to the words the president says. He would like Canada to become the 51st state. We are proud and we're happy about our relationship with Americans. We like our American partners and friends. But there is a line. We are a separate country. We have our own vision for the country and for where we'd like to go. And we will never be the 51st state. The idea that the president could impose on Canada obligations about who we trade with and who we can't trade with, and then simultaneously hit us with massive tariffs and give us poor access to the American market, it makes no sense. And unless you understand that he's interested in turning Canada the 51st state, and we're not.
Do you truly think that's what his intention is? Or do you think, as they have put it, it's to sort of make things more even, to help the United States even out the trade with Canada?
Well, I mean, the idea of evenness is a bit of an absurd one. I mean, we sell a lot of energy to the United States. So if you like affordable energy in the U.S., and it's questionable about whether the president likes affordable energy, given his various policies, but we do sell a lot, and that causes a trade imbalance between Canada and the U.S. But in every other product except for energy, we're in a trade deficit with the U.S. And what it actually means for Americans is a new 50% tax if you're building a new home on plywood, if you're replacing your floor on veneers, if you're getting married on cut flowers, if you're going out fishing on fishing poles. It is a bizarre policy for Americans. It's going to hurt them. And unfortunately, Canada has to hit back. As much as we have friends and family in the U.S., and frankly, I feel sorry for Americans right now that they have a president that is so disinterested in their cost of living concerns and is making them a global pariah. But we have to hit back, and I think it's unfortunate because we've been friends for so many years. This relationship can be destroyed very quickly and efficiently, and the president is working on that.
Wow. Well, the U.S. Trade Representative, I wanted to let you hear what he said. He just told CNBC this morning this about the tariffs.
I think the market knows that at the end of the day, this is 5% of imports from Canada. It's 0.06% of our overall consumption in this economy. So there's no possible way it can really affect U.S. well-being, right?
So Greer says there is no possible way the tariffs can affect the U.S. well-being. Is that how you see it?
Well, Canada is the number one export destination. We're the number one customer for dozens of U.S. states. We're number two for the rest. And this is a negotiation with Canada that is just preceding negotiations with Mexico. And frankly, I think other countries are watching Canada's response. I hope, we'll be following along. At some point, the rest of the world will say enough. In terms of hitting your number one customer with a 50% tariff and expecting that we wouldn't do the same is bizarre. So we will. The Prime Minister has been very clear, tariff American company goods coming into Canada, and we will ensure that Canadians buy from other places in response to this. I just want to give you one. We're a major lumber exporter here in British Columbia.
Yes.
Our tariff level on some wood products to the United States is 85%. That's worse access than Russia and Europe. I mean, I try to make sense of this policy in terms of our relationship with the United States and Canadians, and there's just no sense to it unless you understand the president has a larger ambition.
David Eby, thank you so much for your candid conversation this morning.
With us now is CNN global economic analyst Rana Foroohar. Rana, the Wall Street Journal, which frankly hates tariffs, has an editorial today that said this is the dumbest trade war revisited, and went on to say one reason for Mr. Trump's frigid approval rating is that voters believe Mr. Trump is waging blunderbuss wars without a strategy on trade. They're right. It's hard to separate the economics from the politics here. From an economic standpoint, who's going to feel this more, the United States or Canada, and when?
I got to say, John, I agree with the Wall Street Journal. I think going into a trade war with your one of your closest allies and your northern neighbor is idiocy, frankly. Who's going to feel it more and when? Well, look, it's true that Canada is more vulnerable overall economically to the U.S. We're a bigger market for them if you take it in its entirety. But here's the rub, John. Some of the products that come from Canada, like lumber, for example, very, very important in the U.S. building trades, energy. These are things that Americans are already feeling a pinch on: fuel prices, energy costs, housing costs. So these are actually very, very sensitive items to Americans. And then, it is hard to separate the economics and the
Yes.
politics. And honestly, the two of them are more and more intertwined in advance of the midterms, because I'm hearing, when I'm out in the field reporting in blue states and red states, I'm hearing, what is going on? That the tariff wars just seem like, a goal for the other side, and people don't understand it. And it amplifies their concern about how the president is mishandling the economy.
And I was going to say, you took the words right out of our mouth. You really can't separate the politics from the economics here in the United States, nor in Canada, because the process over the last year has created this political incentive for Canadian politicians where they almost can't back down against the United States now.
Very true. And Mark Carney, whom I know, he's a tough guy. I mean, he's a fair guy, but he's a tough guy. And you could see when he went into office, he made it very clear that not only was he going to be the anti-Trump, but he was going to stand up to Trump. I mean, this has been from the get-go, that relationship has been one that was always going to be contentious because Carney is not one to cut a deal with this president. He's calling him out. He's saying, look, America has changed. And, when you think about what the U.S. was pushing back on at the 11th hour, things like trying to prevent the Canadians from pushing French language streaming content and cultural products, that's a sovereign issue. I mean, any nation would feel a little miffed if you say that they can't, produce products in their own, content in their own language. It's a dual language country. That's something that is going to get anybody's back up, and Carney is certainly not going to take it laying down.